Hello, my name is Sara Davies. I'm a Professor of International Relations at Griffith University, and I'm Deputy Director for Indo-Pacific Research for the Centre for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, CVOR.
Hi, my name is Phyu. I'm a research fellow at Center of Excellence for the Elimination of Violence Against Women at Griffith University in Australia.
We're here to talk to you about a paper that we have had published in the Review of International Studies called Can the State Prevent? The prevention of sexual violence and conflict is the responsibility of all actors, the United Nations, states, as well as perpetrators, and at the community level as well. It is really important, though, in environments where the state has had a role in supporting entities that have committed this violence or even refusing to investigate and prosecute this violence, to pursue ways in which that they can realize their responsibility to end this sexual violence and conflict. In this paper, we are studying one particular initiative that is sought to ensure that states adopt and live up to their responsibility to prevent sexual violence and conflict.
In this paper, we explore the Joint Communiqué, which is a bilateral agreement signed between the individual states and the United Nations Special Representative for the Secretary General for Sexual Violence in Conflicts. Joint Communicate is designed to jointly develop the bilateral arrangements at the state level to prevent and respond conflict-related sexual violence effectively. There are 13 joint communiques to date that are signed with the individual states and the non-state armed groups. 10 of the joint communiques are signed with the states actors and among across the 8 countries. Myanmar is one of the country. In this paper, we try to compare and similarities and differences between joint communiques that are signed with the states in 8 countries. We find that in the case of Myanmar, there are some unique features which we would not find in other contexts. For example, in Myanmar, there is no UN mission or UN peacekeeping special political mission. But in other contexts, prior to signing the joint communique, there were some missions which set up as a lever for communicating and jointly working with the states. In addition, in the context of Myanmar, the Joint Communique doesn't have a language of inclusion, which we find that is not the case for the other contexts. And finally, we also find that the standards that are put in place for enforcing the military, who are also the very perpetrator of conflict-related sexual violence in the context of Myanmar, are weaker in comparing to other 7 countries. So finally, we find that we explore Myanmar as a case study further, and we find that the agreement that are signed in Myanmar as a failure, um, because in the primary purpose of joint communicate is to jointly implement with the United Nations at the domestic level. But in fact, UN has been excluded in the process from the beginning. And the whole implementation process has been unilaterally developed by the state government during the democratic transitions, and which continue to fail after the military coup in February 2021.
In our conclusion, we find make 3 points. First of all, we're really sympathetic, and indeed, we can see much merit in the idea of a joint commune. There is a need to make sure that states also realise their responsibility to protect populations and to prevent this violence. So it's a really important initiative, and we certainly wouldn't want it to be assumed from this paper that we're saying that they shouldn't be further pursued. But there do need to be conditions attached to these, and there even maybe needs to be consideration of ending them when conditions cannot be met to protect populations and to be truly gender inclusive in their pursuit. In this paper, what we argue is that there needs to be really strict conditions around the way in which these communiques are not only signed, but then implemented, ensuring that all who signed are at the table, including the United Nations and the perpetrators, but also crucially, if it's going to have a gender inclusive approach, which it must have to prevent this violence, there needs to be the opportunity for women's groups and for gender rights groups to be part of the implementation. Finally, we argue that when there is an involvement of a state that has a high degree of perpetration, it becomes all the more important to have that international actor continually present in the implementation and the realization of the agreement. We hope you find much information from reading this article, and we really look forward to hearing from you about your engagement with the work. Thank you.
Thank you.